Welcome back, everyone. We are Little Brown Women, and this is our podcast, Unplugged. Every fortnight, we talk candidly with our wondrous guests and with each other about a range of important and topical issues, often from the lens of identity, culture, and empowerment. Today, we are absolutely thrilled to welcome Danica Gim, one of our favourite modern online poets and artists. Since 2017, Danica has built a loyal following on Instagram and is known for her ethereal, spiritual, and beautiful illustrations combined with the most magical words. In today's episode, we explore the woman behind the art, her life journey to becoming one of the most recognized online artists, the influence of mental and physical health on her creations, and the notion of identity and culture. So without further ado, let's get talking.
Hi, Danica.
Hi there.
How are you doing today?
I'm so good. Thank you. How are you? I'm so excited to be here.
Yay, I'm so glad. I honestly think you are such an intriguing person. Having gotten to know you, Danica, I really see your art through a different lens. You are such an interesting person, and our audience are really going to love listening to you throughout this. But to begin this conversation, I wanted to touch on your journey as a young woman, how you became a writer and an artist. Your story, much as ours, is extremely interesting and extremely relatable. So let's begin with first getting to know more about you and focusing on your background, your journey, and how did it start? What pushed you in this direction?
I think I had a bit of a genetic predisposition for the creative stuff. It started for me very young. As a child, I just loved writing and doodling. And in Dutch, we have a word that's, we say knutselen, which is like a verb to create something with basically everything. So that's something I really love to do. And I grew up in a tiny village in the Netherlands. Even most Dutch people wouldn't know it. I remember my childhood as something wonderful. And I think the things we enjoy as a child, or we show a natural talent or preference for, are things we are meant to pursue to a certain degree when we're older. And no matter if it's like a hobby or profession. So for me, that was writing and creating. And I kept doing that actually as I became older in high school. I was always in art class trying to paint or talk to my teacher about getting into art school. That's something I didn't end up doing, but it was definitely something that I just needed to do. It wasn't as much as a question, if you know what I mean.
It's like therapy, isn't it? It's like it's your way of releasing thoughts and emotions. And you know what's quite interesting is I know you had quite a sheltered upbringing, isn't it?
I did.
Coming
yes,
out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I grew up in a very religious home, and it wasn't that I wasn't allowed to do stuff, but it was just always present. I grew up in a religious family. I went to a religious elementary school, to a religious high school. Then in college, I joined a religious student society. I joined a Christian student house when I was 18. So it was always present. And writing was definitely an outlet to also escape that world sometimes, because it weighed heavy on me. I found some things very difficult. The way women were perceived in that world, the way gay people were perceived in that world. It was all things I had definitely questions about, but didn't know how to ask. And writing and creating definitely was an outlet for that too.
This is why I say you're so relatable, because what people instantly assume is probably you come from a very different upbringing, a very different background. But I have had very similar experiences. I grew up with the freedom to know, but not with the freedom to explore. And so that leaves us in a very uncomfortable position, because we have such curious minds. And writing and drawing and creating that content for you was almost like exploring that curiosity, and that's what's so interesting. But how has it helped you mentally develop? Because lots of writers that we've spoken to have said it's, you know, they've either gone through a breakup and then they use it as sort of a healing
Yes.
process or a growing process. I feel
Oh
like for
yeah, I
you,
went
it's
through
a
all
it's a
that.
but that's what your audience love. That's what I
Yes.
love. You know, it's the rawness of it. It's the fact that you can see your growth through your content and your art, and that's what makes you, I think that's
Yeah.
what it really touches people more than it being beautiful and pleasing and aesthetic.
Yeah, it's the journey, right? Yeah.
That's it, it's the journey you've gone through. It's that journey. And how has it helped you mentally develop?
Well, I think for me, the turning point was when I moved to Vancouver when I was 22 for an internship because I was studying film at the time. And that was really the first time for me that I left that world that I just told you about. That was the first time in my life that I wasn't surrounded by a religious community. So suddenly I was free to explore things for myself and form my own opinion about it without being influenced from the outside. And that was both mentally very freeing, but also sort of a slap in the face, to be honest, because I suddenly realized that some things had been taught from birth, basically, were really, really toxic and were not serving me well at all. And that was a turning point for me personally, because then I really started writing and using my creativity as a tool to start processing and unpacking all these things that I've been taught. And that was hard. That was when, like you said, I had been in a relationship at that point, and I was like, I need to get out of this relationship. I need to like change my life completely. This is not what I want. This is not the world I want to be in. I'm meeting all these beautiful people, and I started realizing these are not going to be sent to hell for believing something different or for who they love or how they decide to express themselves. And it was very confronting to become aware of your own programming and realizing through no fault of your own in that sense, you uh, believed some people to be less than you, or you judged them on a basis of wanting to save them, of wanting them to go to heaven too. You know, that's always the underlying thought in these communities. So it's from a tricky point of love, but it was not healthy. And the moment I started realizing that, oh man, that was rough.
It's an extremely freeing but challenging time, because you kind of want to
Yes.
reach out and say, somebody help me, I don't know what's going on. But at the same time,
Yeah.
you want to say, this is so exhilarating to know that all those questions I had within me, other people have been asking them, or, you know, other things have been happening that relate to them. So I can totally understand that. And I can really see that through your work as well. It shows the sort of the struggle you had gone through in determining yourself and figuring out who you are from being in a little bubble to then being broken up into the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it was also, like you said, it was not all misery. It was also wonderful in some sense. Like, wow, the world is so much bigger than I thought it was, and so much more enriching and empowering than I believed. And for me, writing, it saved me at that point, because I needed an outlet to describe these things that were happening to me. And I think I started from a very angry point. I needed to express that I was angry what I was taught, and how my body was viewed by church, and how I as a woman viewed my sexuality now, because all these things I'd been taught. And there was, there were really some toxic things in that, and I needed to unpack that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I can absolutely relate to you on that front. Just growing up on knowing a certain pretense, to then have that taken away from you and realize that the world is extremely different. It's hard because it's like reinventing your identity. How do you reinvent who you have been concreted to be? Do you know what I mean? It's like being reborn in a very, very strange way, because you're having to do it from a perspective of adult living on your own. You don't have the comforts of mum and dad to guide you, but taking all of that experience, all of that emotion, all of that creativity and art that you had created. What made you decide that this was the career that you were going to make from it, or this was the career for you?
Well, I started sharing fragments of my writing because my Instagram account had actually started as a poetry account. I started sharing snippets of my poetry online, and very quickly, actually, it started to take off. And I started completely anonymous because I was like, oh, I don't want anyone to know I'm writing about sex and whatnot. But people had such a positive response to it, and I found a community there and other women who were going through the same thing, and um, women that were finding comfort in what I was writing, and it felt like a sense of purpose for me too. And then suddenly, before I knew it, I was hitting 10,000 followers, and I was like, okay, this is nice. This is lovely. At that point, I wasn't thinking, oh, this is going to be my career or anything like that. But then finally, when I started hitting 20K, at that point, Facebook and Instagram were making a change, or they're combining companies. And suddenly my account was being suggested to all my family members and all my friends in the real world because my number was linked to the account or something like that. And suddenly everyone knew what I was doing. And my parents called me all upset, like, your grandma just read some sex poem you wrote on the internet. I'm like, oh God, no. But
we
for me,
we really do thank you for that, Danica. I must say, honestly, we really do thank you for that, because I'm sure the girls are probably nodding with me. But without someone taking a stand and revealing their identity and coming forward and saying, you know what, sod it, this is me, this is what I'm going to
yeah,
do, that takes tremendous courage. That takes a huge standpoint to say, I have gone through these experiences. This is me. This is how I feel. It's okay for women to feel and think these things and to challenge your everyday
yes.
norm. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for
Oh,
making that
thank you.
step, because without you, as one of the many that have taken that step to create a platform that is comfortable and inviting for all women and men, and, you know, many other people, we have now been able to take a standpoint and say, you know, we want to join her. We want to join this movement of empowerment and that freeing feeling.
That means so much. Thank you. And it's definitely, you're on a crossroad at one point. You're like, okay, now I'm getting resistance, and I'm talking to my dad, and it's not all brave, if you know what I mean, because I'm still like, my hand is shaking while holding the phone, talking to my father, like, oh no, I'm gonna keep doing this. But yeah, at that point you have the choice of, okay, I'm deleting this, I'm going back into my comfortable life and making sure that all my family, my friends, they're all comfortable with me, or I'm going to continue on this path. And I made a very conscious decision, and I was very scared doing so, but I did it anyway, to move forward. And that's really when the account started evolving in more. I kept writing. Then at one point I started sharing my own art. And then at that point, the anger had faded a little bit in me too. I felt that part of me was expressed, and I was ready to move on to something more. And that's really when I started sharing my art and selling it too. And that's when I realized, okay, this is actually something I can do for a living, which is awesome.
And that was the turning point in your career, wasn't it? Just having that moment of realization that, oh my God, everybody is going through the same thing and want to hear the same thing. And you know what I actually really do love is the fact that you are an empowered, beautiful, independent woman that is still absolutely terrified of her father. Because everybody that has gone through, I'm terrified of my father too. I am, you know what, I can talk for England, but when it comes to my dad, I am so scared of him. But it keeps me grounded, you know? It like keeps a barrier around you from from doing too much.
Yeah.
It reels you back and it says, what would my father think? You know, would he
exactly. Oh my goodness. And I have to clarify, like, I love my dad to death. And he's my role model and everything, and he loves me so much. And like my fear is always comes from a place of not wanting to disappoint him. And yeah, it's we're different in certain things and also in a lot of things the same, so it's always interesting to see how that unfolds with certain
Yeah,
things. But yeah.
absolutely. And I think many of us have really, really great as women have really, really great relationships with our fathers. And I think
Mhm.
especially for me, we go through this journey together of learning because
Yeah.
I'm constantly teaching him about being an independent woman and about being a woman with her own voice. And that's not something he's used to. And I'm sure your father's he may not have said it to you, but I'm sure he is definitely learning something from you too.
I think so. Yeah, I think we maybe not talk about it as much as we sometimes should, but we're definitely learning from each other, and I think I'm definitely challenging him sometimes with my points
I
of
love
view
that.
and my decisions.
I
But that's
love
good.
that.
That's good for everyone.
Absolutely. And that's how we should go about teaching our parents. It's as much as we want to empower the future generations and the people that are looking up to us. It's really important for us to take our parents on our journey with us too, because I feel like it will be extremely freeing for them too to see the other side of things and see the person that you're becoming. But to be an artist is to be authentic, which you are absolutely through and through. But what is one piece of advice you would give to any artist that's looking to start their creative journey?
Well, I would say follow your bliss in the sense that do something that you really enjoy doing. Because if you go into it with like, oh, I have to do this because I have to make money and I have to get this many followers for it to be worth something, then you already go in with such resistance and such you're setting yourself up for failure already. I think if you do something where you genuinely enjoy, then you can't go wrong, because then even if it doesn't work out, at least you had a great time doing it. So I think that's also growing my account on Instagram. For me, it was fun. It was light. It was a way of expression. It was a way of genuinely connecting with other people from all over the world. But if you go in with like, oh, I have to post 3 times a day because else my art isn't going to be seen, I don't think that's the right mindset to go in to it. So my advice would definitely be just do what you love doing, because that's what you're meant to be doing. So just do it.
That's fantastic advice. Honestly, I wouldn't have said it better than that. Is just be you and do it for yourself, and the rest will follow.
Danica, I'm so happy to have you on our show. And I know a lot of our listeners will be delighted to hear the voice behind the wonderful illustrations and the artwork you create. And I love how raw and deep your illustrations are, but in a gentle way. It's open and yet, like, the approach you take, it's so soft and gentle. It's incredibly empowering. I'm such a huge fan of your work, and
Thank you.
I came across your work during a hard time. And right now, it's placed near my bedside table. And it's actually such a nice positive reminder when I wake up in the mornings. And it
Oh.
really starts off my day really well. And I really love how it's heavily based on female form. And so my first question to you is, why did you choose to focus on women? And what message are you trying to get across with your artwork?
First of all, thank you so much. It's so sweet. It's always the sweetest compliment I can get when people say that my art helped them in some way. And I think I really chose to focus on women's bodies because of what I told you about growing up as religious as I did. And for me, it was a way of unpacking both the religious view and that of the patriarchy on women's bodies. And they're probably very interconnected. And it's not that my parents ever told me anything bad about my body,
Yeah.
but I think there's always a lot of microaggressions, especially in church, towards women, the way they're dressed, the way they're behaved. I do think Europeans have a slightly freer mind when it comes to the body, when, for example, in the US. But yeah, I think especially for me, it was unpacking the crime of having sex before marriage and
Oh,
being
wow. Yeah.
attracted to both women and men. That was also a big thing for me that I had to learn how to deal with, because I was taught that was so wrong. And yeah, I wanted to show the female body in a non-sexual way. Like, it can be beautiful and sexual and yet non-sexual.
I know, yeah. The way you
Yeah.
do it is just so tasteful. It's so elegant. And, it's definitely reflecting back on your childhood experiences. And that's really deep rooted within your identity, like we touched on in the previous segment. I think it's empowering that you've identified that on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the best compliment I ever got from a guy, actually, on one of my paintings was, "You changed my view on women's bodies." This, like, that my
Oh,
account
wow,
was
that's
helping him to
huge. Yeah,
yeah, to like view it as a piece of art instead of something that always had to be sexualized. And I think it was a young guy still, and I was like, "Whoa, that's so important, and that means so much to me. If you can even change the mind of one person in that way, I think that's
exactly.
so valuable." Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's so valuable that you're touching so many minds, and the fact that you're getting that feedback. You're doing something right, Danique. You're doing something right. It's incredible.
It's funny,
And
right? How I still need to hear that sometimes, because I still come from such a background where I think a lot of
yeah,
still sometimes judge what I do. And now the more success you gain, the more open-minded people get too, right? So it
yeah.
definitely gets better. But it's funny, yeah, how when you say that, like, "Oh, you're doing it well," I'm like, "Oh, really? I am? Okay, good."
I'll continue reminding you. I will be that number one fan.
Yeah.
So coming back to the female body form, I think I've been quite insecure about my body image since
Mm.
a teenager. I think we all have, right? And the way I look in certain outfits, it's like, oh, I look a bit podgy in this. And your
Mm.
artwork being so open and raw, and you celebrating the female body form has definitely
Yeah.
played a positive impact on my own insecurities. I can outright say that. I think any sort of creative outlet will help you with any personal recovery journeys. And I, for one, can say that I use Little Brown Women for just that, like talking therapy, just what we're doing right now. And, I've
Yeah.
started journaling a lot more with music in the background. And, that's another way of my creative outlets for my own personal healing. So from getting to know you, we know that a lot of your personal and female centric experiences have influenced the art that you produce today. And we are incredibly fortunate to be able to discuss the theme of female health and specifically your experience with endometriosis. And so,
Yes.
how has this experience affected you, and how has this inspired your artistic work?
Well, to give you a little background info on that, I suffered from really really bad periods ever since I was 15, I think. But I was already getting them since I was 11, which I
Wow.
have to tell you is a sign of endometriosis if you get your period very early. Just to educate
Mm,
the people out there.
good to know.
um, yeah, and it was not some gentle period cramping. It would make me sometimes throw up. I would be laying on the bathroom floor, unable to move. I would
God,
often
yeah.
think, this is what child labor must feel like. It can't be
Oh,
anything
God,
else
yeah.
than this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was. I don't know if my mom maybe had the same when she still got her period, and was not, because of that, not really phased by it. Like,
Maybe lack of
yeah,
awareness, maybe not knowing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But she was always kind to me, like making sure that I was okay. And sometimes she would even let me skip school if it was really bad. But just the fact that you have to skip school because you're in so
Yeah.
much pain is, of course, crazy. And then at one point I started visiting doctors about it. And, they say, "Oh, just take an ibuprofen, you'll be fine." You're like, "Oh, okay." Who
Yeah.
am I to question the doctors?
The doctors,
And
yeah.
then, yeah. And then it was actually when I was living in Vancouver that I suddenly started getting so much pain that I would start fainting, and I ended up in the ER a couple times. And no one knew what was wrong with me. Even a gynecologist couldn't tell me what was wrong with me. And at one point, you just start believing you're a little crazy, you know, because then they start saying things like, "Oh, it might be stress, might be stress," and it was a stressful time for me. Like I told you in the way that I was unpacking a lot of stuff and saying farewell to a lot of beliefs.
Yeah.
So you just internalize that and you think, okay, I get maybe they're right. But then I met my amazing husband, by the way, in Vancouver, and we got married, and he started seeing me being in pain every month. And he grew up with a sister, and he at one point told me, "This is not normal. This is not how it's supposed to be. This is not okay. Like, this is not how I've seen it happening to other women." And he started doing some research, and he came to me with the term endometriosis, which I could hardly pronounce at that point. And he said, "I think this is what you have. Go see your doctor about this specifically." At first, I dismissed him, you know, because he said it wasn't normal, but it was definitely my normal.
And I bet you're thinking, he's a guy. How is he meant to know?
I know. Like, you don't know what I'm going
you
through.
Don't know. yeah.
But that's why it's so important to have educated guys on
Absolutely.
female health, on women health problems, because they can literally save your life.
Yeah.
So I went to the doctor. I told them I wanted to be checked on this specifically. And coincidentally, they had just opened up a endometriosis clinic in my city where I was living in. So that was great. So I went there. It was still like a 3-month waiting list or something. But the moment I went there, like their intern was able to diagnose me within minutes with an internal ultrasound. And the moment they told me, "Look, here on this picture, you can actually see the growth. We can see what is wrong with you. You have this. You are not crazy." I just started sobbing in that doctor's office. I just started crying uncontrollable. And they were running at me with tissues, like, "Oh, are you okay?" Like all panicky. But it was such a bittersweet moment of like, oh yeah, this sucks, but I'm so relieved I'm not insane. And this has affected me for over a decade, and not being able to go to parties or having to leave home early, missing out on school. And now I can finally try to do something about it. And, you know, there's many ways to try to at least relieve the symptoms of endometriosis. There's not a cure. And they don't all work the same for people. But for me, just going on birth control helped a lot. Just not having my periods anymore. And that also took a few months to get into, because the first 3 months, my body really had to get used to the hormones. And that takes a while, and it was really miserable time too. But once it kicked in, oh my gosh, it changed my entire life. I suddenly didn't have, I didn't have to cancel plans. I could hang out like after 9 p.m. without crashing, being so tired, you know. And still sometimes I get some symptoms, and then I look at my husband, I'm like, "Thank you, because this used to be all the time, and it's been months since I felt anything like this." So yes, another thing we women have to deal with.
I wanted to first of all congratulate you on your courage and bravery on talking about this so openly on our platform. A lot of us don't feel comfortable talking about it so openly. And I think I had the mild onset of endometriosis. And so I'm currently monitoring it at the moment. But I was very lucky. I was able to identify this, that it was kind of as a result of a specific birth control that I was using, and it was encouraging like the cyst formation, right? But again, it was very lonely. I thought I was going crazy, and it was like, am I too weak? Is it because I can't handle the painful cramps?
Oh God,
you know? And I couldn't openly talk about it, and it's because there's such a huge lack of awareness. It's very debilitating, and it's something that you actually can't even openly discuss with your line managers. I mean, I felt that way anyway. And there were definitely times at work that I couldn't even stand up in the office. So
you poor thing.
I had to crouch my way to the toilets, without anyone looking, and just wait for the pain to subside, taking the ibuprofen. I completely understand everything that you're saying.
And
completely.
That's not normal. And we need to teach young girls that that's not normal, because in so many, TV shows, and also maybe girls like when they talk to each other, it's like, oh, my period's so bad.
Yeah.
But your period is not supposed to be so bad that you can't move, can't do stuff, that you're crying. Then you have to go see a doctor, and preferably a younger female doctor, because that's also the thing, because then you're talking to this 60-year-old man who has very limited idea of what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. That feeling that you had when you had the ultrasound, and the nurse, or the lady who was doing it, obviously told you, look, we can see the growth. It was the same kind of uplifting, bittersweet feeling. It was like, I am not crazy, there is something wrong. So I completely relate to that. I do.
And it's weird, we have to feel that, right? We have to advocate for ourselves so much to be able to be even heard. And like you said, there's such a stigma around periods either way. Just talking about it, it's always like, oh, especially lots of boys get maybe a little icky, and then you get icky, and then everyone's just like, okay, let's just not talk about it.
Let's just not talk about it. It's just getting too icky.
Exactly. Yeah, that we teach our boys to talk about it. It's fine. It's normal.
But having had those experiences, I've learned to become more comfortable and brave. And by you taking the step forward today has actually helped me talk about it with our own listeners today. I've never spoken about this with anyone apart from, the girls and my family back at home. And it's very liberating. I feel free. And it's definitely...
that.
It's just, I feel great. And it's definitely having a profound impact on my own, say, mental health, right? And this nicely leads me on to my next question, which is, what is your perspective on female mental health, and how has this changed as you've become older?
That's a very good question. I think as women, sort of what we just discussed, I think we just experience a lot more emotional labor than men, because of these things we just discussed. We have to advocate for ourselves so much. We are aware of all these things happening in our bodies. We have to fight harder for the same salary, to be even heard. We are worrying about, like the thing that just happened in the UK. We are worried about walking on the street and not being attacked. Then we're worried about talking about that fear with our male counterparts, and not being talked down upon, or that we're overreacting. So I think women are just penalized so much more. And I noticed as I'm getting older, I don't have patience for it anymore. I think it's just so important to speak up where you feel comfortable to. It's not your responsibility to fix anything or anyone, because we're already fixing so much and dealing with so much. And I think if I talk about myself, I worry about, for example, with my art, like I think I suffer from imposter syndrome sometimes, like the bigger I get, I'm like, oh, am I doing this right?
Yeah.
Do I even deserve this? And I'm like, no, I do deserve this. I worked hard for this.
You do deserve this.
And it's sometimes hard, because then also women sometimes do it to each other too, because we are so raised in a society that's set up to turn us against each other or hold each other accountable. I noticed that also a lot with like the social justice movements that are going on. Then I look at Instagram, and then it's always like women who are being penalized, for speaking up too much or too little. And then I'm looking at these accounts of like male artists, and there's nothing going on there. They're just posting what they're posting as always. They're not speaking up about anything, and no one is saying anything. And that's, that's where we still have some work to do, I think.
Definitely. As I've briefly discussed in previous episodes, I've just embarked on a journey of exploring my own mental health. I think 2020 for all of us has been a year of awakening. And I started therapy last year, and I just wish I had discovered it sooner. But, at least I started it now. And none of us
That's
really
amazing.
understand what mental health means. I've said this a lot, but I do feel that maintaining mental health is the same as maintaining our actual physical health. For example, going to the doctors for regular checkups, or going to the dentist for our teeth, or going to the optometrist for our eyes. The list goes on, but we all forget about our mental health, and our mind is incredibly important to protect and maintain, as it pretty much governs our lives. I'm delighted that we are living in an age where mental health isn't as much of a taboo topic when you're comparing it to the 1980s, 1990s. I'm relatively speaking now. It wasn't a very long time ago either. There is a huge amount of work yet to be done. And we've come heaps and bounds away from that age. But, wow, it's still pretty much a taboo subject.
Yeah, there's still stigma around that. And like you said, luckily there's more tools now and more awareness. And the internet is one of the many nice things it brings, is a connection, and you can hear other people's stories and not feel so lonely in what you're going through. But
exactly,
it's still, mental health is still definitely put second to your physical health or to your career. And like you said, it's so important to take care of the mind.
And if you had to raise awareness on it, what aspects of female mental health would you give importance to?
I think the feeling for us women that we have to keep it all together and to keep it all going. We have to make money. We have to take care of the kids. We have to take care of the house, the relationship. Like the things the patriarchy taught us, the society. Yeah, the exhaustion part of being a woman, the fearing of our mental health, but also physical health when we walk down the street. I think it's most important to take away some of the burden for women, and that can be done simply by already giving support where it's due. Like, instead of saying not all men, ask, like, how can I help you feel more safe? What that kind of phrases are so important to dissect, especially now. I think it's trending on Twitter, hashtag not all men after what happened.
Exactly.
And that's another thing then for women mentally that we have to dissect, like, oh God, now we have to deal with the feelings of these men. Well, we are having our own feelings right here.
I know.
So that's definitely the aspect I would focus on. And I think what you said, going through therapy, having someone else take care of us and ask us the questions we need to be asked and help us unpack our traumas, that can already be so helpful. And it's so important we have access to that too, right? Because not all women have access to that.
I love that. Unpacking traumas, absolutely beautifully put, Danica. As one of the reasons why we started Little Brown Women, right, was to talk openly about taboo topics, the topics that we've actually spoken today, and with the hope of increasing awareness and continuing being open and educated about these things. It's our responsibility to understand these topics and become aware as the years go by, and that truly will help this world become a better place. I truly believe that. And thank you so much for having such an open-hearted conversation with us. It's definitely been one of those episodes of deep thinking and reflection. And we all really admire your bravery in talking so openly with us and our listeners. And also, we cannot wait to see more artwork from you in the years to come.
Danica, this conversation has been phenomenal and so educational, which I'm not really surprised about at all, because you just seem like that kind of person on Instagram, and we know that you are that kind of person. And we are so thrilled to be able to get to know you, the woman behind the art. And honestly, there's so much that I've related to, and I know that both Kay and Dami have related to as well. you've opened up about some very empowering things, how you have and how you are challenging your upbringing, your family, their thoughts, their beliefs, your thoughts, your actions, your beliefs, the way that you discuss and you've understood the plight of women through your own experiences. It's been so special to understand kind of how your individual journey of growth has helped you to become the woman, the artist, the writer that you are. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing those very intimate details with us. I know so many of our listeners will learn, they will relate, they will take so much away from this. I know I will, for sure.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I hope so.
Just to even have you on the show is such an honor. So you know, we can't thank you enough. And as both kind of Dami and Kay have said, we are such great fans of your work, your artwork, your wordsmithery. We've followed you for years, and I found such a deep connection with your illustrations and your words. And for this part of the conversation, I really wanted to touch a little bit on the relationship between your work and your understanding of identity, because I know that we've previously spoken about the questions you've been asking over the years and quite recently about racial and cultural identity, especially
Yes.
you having grown up in rural Holland and having a very conservative upbringing. As an admirer of your work, something that comes through is really the extreme diverse and empowering content. There's a really clear inclusion of identity. And I have a feeling that that's linked to your own experiences. So I wanted to explore the questions surrounding your journey of identity. What has that been like? How do you understand the concept of identity?
Well, to be honest, it is something that I struggle with a lot sometimes. Yeah, like I told you, I grew up in a tiny village, and the common question I would get there was where I was from. Uh, because to be honest, I didn't meet anyone that was darker than me until my late teens, and I'm not that dark. Because yeah, in Holland, if you've ever been here, most people here are very tall, very blonde, and very blue-eyed and very fair-skinned. And I was very tiny, very very dark-haired, brown eyes, and rather olive-skinned. So that was something that was vaguely present in the background. Like people would touch my hair sometimes, and the kids would say like, "Oh, it's not real. You painted it or you dyed it." And I was like, "No, this is my real hair." But it is an interesting subject because especially now I've grown up and I've seen the world and I married this beautiful Colombian man. I discovered that in other parts of the world I'm considered to be white, and in this part of the world where I grew up, uh, it was always in question what it was I was exactly, and that's something that stayed with me, and I think it's an interesting topic of being ethnically ambiguous, to use that term, that uh, you feel sometimes it's not valid to talk about its own set of challenges that comes with. Because I personally always feel, oh, I do not have it that bad, and there's people with another racial identity that are suffering so much more from racism and aggressions, and even to the point of fearing for their lives. That's to that extent I'm not experiencing that, but what I am experiencing are microaggressions, to the extent that I'm asked to remove a scarf from my hair because they have an anti-hijab policy, or that me and my husband are stopped in a store because they think we're stealing something because we're considered to be brown, and that's and those are things that happen in your experience, but that I personally sometimes not always feel valid that they're valid enough to talk about because of the confusion of where I'm from. Sometimes, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, definitely, Danica. I mean, thank you so much for opening up about this. It's really brave of you. And just something that you said just there, where you feel that you almost can't speak about these experiences because they're not valid. I think with everything that's happened over the past year, and just really in general over the past how many thousands of years, and you speaking about your experiences, as a single woman, a woman who is considered white in most of the world, but as you grew up within your hometown in a very conservative upbringing, you were actually seen as the other, for example. It's so
Yes.
interesting to understand your experience because there's such a duality in your experience. And actually, I don't think many people would ever assume that that was your experience. And so for you to say it, I think what you've what you've said really highlights the issue of systemic and innate prejudice and racism, and actually about intercommunity prejudice, because
Oh yeah.
I mean, as a brown woman, I've experienced something like colorism, and it doesn't seem too far off from what you've experienced. And between K Dami and I, the whole reason we made sure that our logo demonstrated or displayed our different skin colors is to show
Mm.
that while we are under the umbrella of brown, there are lots of shades and they are all as special. They are all as beautiful. There is nothing less important. There is nothing lesser
Yeah,
than one of
absolutely.
us. And it's really interesting because as a person of color, speaking about racism and prejudice, it is a difficult subject, but it's very much there. And I really commend you, Danique, for even bringing it up because yes, your experience is completely valid. There is nothing invalid about it. And when we kind of say interracial couple, I
Hmm.
always think that it's it's a given that when you say that, you wouldn't think of two people who are generally quite light in color, in skin color, in complexion. But I know that your husband is from South America and you are from Europe and you are in an interracial couple. And therefore, why can't you have the same experiences as a couple where one partner is black and the other partner is white? It's exactly the same thing. And for you to then sort of talk about how you've experienced prejudice and racism as a couple because people think that you are perhaps from the part of the world that I'm originally from. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really, it's powerful, it's deeply saddening. And actually, it's almost as if you share an experience of a group of people that you don't originate from. Because if anything, you have now or you're now able to empathize so much more. And I think these are the types of conversations we should be having. Everybody should be able to talk about their experiences and discuss their experiences because when you start having these conversations with lots of different people, you raise awareness, right? What you're so good at doing, Danique, you raise awareness. And I mean, I definitely see that through your artwork. And I'm not surprised now why I've always felt such a relatability to you and why your artwork is so powerful. It's probably because it's been influenced by all of these life experiences that you've had.
Absolutely. I think for uh, coming to my art, it's what I do. I create. I'm known for the silhouettes I make. I think right, the black figure style. And what I love about that is everyone can project their own view onto that. So
Mhm.
they can project themselves onto that however they are, whatever their ethnicity is, whatever their skin tone, their hair. Um, that's that's really what I like to do when I create that. And of course, I try to use different shapes and different hair structures and everything.
Mm.
But I feel but with the black figure style, it's really, you create a stamp effect and it can be whatever the viewer it wants to be. So it becomes an experience of the observer in that sense. And yeah, I think what you said, it's so beautiful that you say like my experiences are powerful in a way that I can relate uh, to other people going through the same thing. And it's so funny because I never viewed it that way. but the way you said that really made me think like, oh yeah, I guess that's true. And then
Yeah.
at the same time, I still feel that, oh, but it's really not as bad as other people experience it, and I don't want to make a big deal out of it. And at the same time, like you said, especially now being in an interracial relationship, I always use the term with my husband. I don't think it's an official term, but that's how I try to explain it to him. Is I I experience a lot of ethnic projecting. I feel so. I can't pass for black. That's obvious, but I can pretty much pass for anything else out there in the world. And whatever group I'm with, so if I'm with a Latin group, people outside that group assume I'm Latin. If I'm in a South European group, people outside that group assume I'm South European, even though while the actual people of that group know very much that I'm not ethnically a part of them. And that sometimes can feel a little lonely.
Yeah.
Because you feel, I was actually talking about to my husband about this yesterday, that I sometimes feel a lack of community to talk about these experiences, because I often feel it's not appropriate to share them with actual people of color who are going through it 100 times worse. I always feel like, oh, there's not a place for me. And then at the same time, they also can't completely relate to what I'm experiencing, because they still have that community that is going through the same thing, and where they can share their struggles with from their own cultural point of view. And I think it's actually interesting because the more the world is opening up through travel, and the world is so small now, I think a lot of future generations are going to be more mixed and more mixed, and a lot of them eventually won't be able to trace back where maybe their genetic expression is coming from. Because I think that's the case for me. Like I sort of popped up in my family, and I'm a lot darker than everyone, and that happens sometimes. There can be that one ancestor from the south, and that's completely fine. But a lot of other people will be already experiencing that, or are gonna experiencing that they no longer have any ties to the country or the cultural identity that people still make assumptions about, but still having the experience of being assumed about in that way, or judged or prejudiced. Yeah.
Oh my God, Danica, you're just, everything that you said is just, it's powerful. When you were talking about your artwork and the Black figure, I love how you talk about wanting to make sure that your art is inclusive, but you do it in a way where you don't impose your view on the observer. You talk about it's really the experience as the observer. So you as the artist you're not offering really your understanding of anything. You're allowing the person who purchases your artwork, the observer, to adduce their own meaning to your artwork. And that's so powerful. I hope you know how powerful that is, because we talk a lot, we read a lot, but there are so many other mediums to communicate very important messages through. And art is one of them, for sure, for sure. And for me, as a person of color, I believe that you're helping through your artwork, through your words, through you as you are, to reach people who perhaps wouldn't hear me directly. You're almost like the dove, the messenger in the middle with this really important message. Two different races who, one thinks the other is lesser. And then in between those two races, you just put a person who has created this very beautiful thing from this very open-minded and peaceful place, really just kind of trying to demonstrate that in difference there is strength, and there is always love despite our differences, because our differences are great things. And I think for a long, long, long time, differences have been used to set people against each other, when in fact our differences are our strengths. And the minute that we can accept each other is really I mean, that's when we become a force to be reckoned with. And I I think that your experiences are extremely important. No one should ever have to feel anything other than acceptance. And so, Danique, you should always feel that you can share your experiences, because I've always advocated, and I always believe that experiences are important. That's how you understand and connect with people, because how can you know what someone else is going through if you don't tell them?
Yeah,
And
that's absolutely true.
right, exactly. So the fact that you and I love that you've been so open, and you said that you essentially, if no one knew you, you could pretty much be from anywhere in the world, really, a
Yes,
majority of the world. And you're almost like a litmus test. You're bringing out people's preconceptions, Danique.
that's true. Because a lot, yeah, absolutely, that's so true. Because like you said, like a lot of things are not even about, oh, I think my race is better than yours.
Mm,
It's so much more about prejudice, like, oh, I assume this and this about your country, about your culture, about your
yeah.
color. And my husband and I joke about this all the time because, yeah, he's from South America, from Colombia, but he grew
Mm,
up in the US and I grew up in Europe. And we went into our relationship a little bit naive in the sense that they were like, oh, we're from two Western countries. How different can we really be?
mm.
And let me tell you, there is a lot different there. And we really had to work through that
Yeah.
because the way we communicate both in a language that's not our first, because mine is Dutch, his is Spanish, and he
Mm,
of course grew up in a world where his English is perfect, and my English is very good too, but it's still not the language where you like to express yourself in,
yes.
and especially when emotions come into play. And then also the Dutch language has a lot of synonyms for the same thing, but with a slightly different feeling to it.
Yes, yes.
and and a lot of things that don't translate into English. Well, try to express yourself then. So we really would sometimes just be looking at each other. I do not know what you mean, and you're pissing me off. and that's and that's basically what you see happening in the world, and then online, and then with people you don't actually care about. Because
Mm,
that's what my husband and I always say to each other. Look at how much we love each other and how eager we are to make this work, and how much work we put into it, and we see each other every day, and we can hold each other and look at our body language, and we figured it out. But it takes a while and it takes a lot of effort. Like, how do people expect to be yelling in someone's Instagram comments that comes from a completely different culture, completely different background, even in the same country? That the US is so big, like there's all like these tiny different cultures within the same country. How
yeah.
can you then expect to change someone's mind or to have them understand you when there's not even the love present there of really wanting to understand the other person? Really, what people mostly want to do is try to get their point across. And that's what we always say to each other. Like the majority of the conflicts in this world is just really a communication fault, because people do not understand where the other is coming from.
Danique, I couldn't have put that better myself. It's you put it so beautifully. Love is the universal language, right? And
Yes.
that's what it is. Where there is a situation devoid of love, we don't listen to understand, we listen to reply. And I think
Yes.
so much of the past year has been that. Even just this week, the whole situation with Meghan Markle and Harry, and you just think, step back. These are people. Forget their titles,
Yes.
forget their status, forget anything. At the end of the day, we're human. We're all human, and all humans have the same emotions. We have the same hearts, we have the same organs, we have the same everything. The only thing that differs is our color of skin. And really, that's because we all originate from different parts of the earth. Hence why we need different types of melanin in our skin. That
Yes.
really that's the most basic scientific reason for why we are all different colors. That's it. There is, other
That's
than
it.
that, We're all human. We're the same species. So it's so lovely to hear. I mean, the way that you relate it back to your relationship, it's just lovely. And I love the way that you kind of both said, we're both from the West. How different can we be? And in fact,
Yes.
but that's really it. You can be so different. And I mean, I had the same experience with my fiance. We're both from the sub-Asian continent. He's from Sri Lanka. My mum's from Bangladesh, my father's from India. So we're actually very, very different. Our cultures are completely different. Our languages are completely different, but yet geographically, we're from the same area of the world. And I think it's really easy to just sort of put everyone who looks like the same color in one box. And I just think, no, as a human, our experience is so much more layered than just the color of our skin. And I think that's what you, Danica, have perfectly explained in our conversation today. But speaking to you now, I understand kind of the depth of your art so much more. And I hope that all of our listeners understand the message you are trying to portray through your art and through your words so much more, because I can see how embedded your artwork is within your life. And that's so special.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's really all I'm trying to hope to get across. The everything I told you guys, the female expression of it, the identity expression of it. It's all. I hope to put it all with the observer, and that everyone gets at least something positive out of it, or at least they feel something, no matter what it is. That they feel something when they look at it.
I have one more question, and we end every episode with this question, and I can't wait to hear your answer to it because of just who you are. And the question is, what does empowerment mean to you?
Empowerment means to me the conversation we just had, where we are open, free, and safe to talk about our experiences, the things that matter, the things we can work on, the struggles we share, the struggles we are different in, and listen to each other with love and understanding, and with a real passion to learn a little bit more about the other person. And if everyone would just feel that empowered and that free and that safe in this world, I think we would have a lot less segregation and a lot less issues among each other. So yeah, I think that's my answer.
That was wow. I mean, and I know that you didn't write that down. I know that it just
I did not.
That came from the heart, and wow, I really felt it. Danica, I'm not surprised, but wow, that was a brilliant answer, and I couldn't agree with what you said more. Thank you, and I hope that people who listen to this episode really take a lot away from what you just said, because that's the truth. That really is the truth.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for your great questions, and for the safe environment you all set up for me to talk to you.
That's it for today, guys. As always, we'll be welcoming more great guests over the next few months, so stay tuned in and keep listening. If you love what you hear and want to continue supporting us, please follow us on Spotify and iTunes to keep on top of our latest episodes. We love sharing knowledge and the advice and inspirations of our guests. And if you truly love our content too, please leave a rating and comment on iTunes to help the Unplugged podcast reach the ears of more people who want to feel empowered and join in on the conversations that break the status quo and tackle important and topical issues head on. For more Little Brown Women content, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And don't forget to like and leave a comment on our posts. So until next time, take care, live big, and be kind to yourself.